Hello everybody, welcome to the Shepherd Pie, where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly. Today we have two special guests. We have Sean, who is a licensed counselor, and we have Kelly, who like myself, has the interest in the topic of counseling. Thank you ladies for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
No problem. As life and age has happened, I have become more and more a firm believer in the fact that when you need help, get it. Whether it be for a learning disability, which I personally can have experience with, or a physical illness, or a mental illness needs, use the resources you have at your disposal. The theme, if you can't name it, then you haven't healed from it, came to mind one morning when me and my husband were talking, and I told him that I felt like it was stuff in my life that I hadn't dealt with. And I put it so far back in my mind that I even almost forgot that some of it even occurred. And when it came up visibly for me to see, I realized, oh, I don't think I dealt with this. And it actually hurt. So that kind of got us discussing, and which kind of brought about this topic for YouTube. And I thought, I wonder how many other people, like I, felt the same way. Like, there's stuff that came up that you never even thought about. And then you think about it and it hurts badly. And it brings about open wounds that affect your daily life. And so as I continued to think on some of the things that came up, I realized, I wonder if this is why I respond to certain things the way I do, which led me to say, I think I need to get counseling for this. But then also, which led me to say, why haven't I? And led me to a whole bunch of other questions that we're going to kind of jump into today. So as a side note, I do want to note that resources are just that, they're resources. So I don't want you to think that the resources that you get for, whether it be mental illness, physical illness, or even learning disabilities, that they have all the answers. Because they are just that, they're information that you can use to help change the direction of your life. They don't solve every problem, but they are there to help you and aid in your overall wholeness and health. But I do want to say this before I get ahead of myself. We have a couple questions and comments that we're going to be sharing on, and each of you, I'm sure, are going to be sharing certain parts of your experiences that deal with counseling. So the topic today, as we already said, is counseling, and we're going to look at it from a couple different angles. But the first question I have for you ladies is, why is there a need for counseling in the first place? Why do we, as people, need counseling to begin with?
I'll let the professional
Then let me give a disclaimer. Yes, I'm a professional, but I do not know everything. But I look at, when you look in the Bible, you will read accounts of people actually having mental health conditions. Mm-hmm. It may not say depressed, but it'll say something about the brokenhearted, or if you're in despair or troubled. Mm-hmm. These are all words that why are you downcast, mm-hmm. oh my soul? That's like saying, why are you depressed? Mm-hmm. So because of the fall, I think everything is broken. All our relationships aren't the way they're supposed to be. And even our literal brain. That's mm-hmm. one of the things I like to see people get past. Like, in terms of counseling, the brain is an organ in your body, and it does not always work the way it's supposed to. Mm-hmm. It can, and then sometimes it doesn't. It's just like, sometimes you have a stomach ache and sometimes your stomach is fine or whatever. So there are different things that can come up in life where you are downcast, you are troubled, and you need someone to help you through it. So I think trouble, as long as we are on this earth, you will have trials and tribulations, and that's where the Holy Spirit is called the Wonderful Counselor. He is our counselor. So I think we need counseling, just like we need teachers to help us to learn, and doctors to help us physically heal. We need counselors to help us with our emotions, mental, sometimes just relational issues. That's my take.
I agree. Mm-hmm. I agree with you. But I also feel like sometimes people think they can handle it themselves. Mm-hmm. I think pride gets in the way. Mm-hmm. I think even things we learn growing up, mm-hmm. like hearing different things from family members. Mm-hmm. We're all taught that we can work it out ourselves, or we can talk it out ourselves, or sometimes it's even swept under the rug for you to even forget. But we all know we don't forget. It's still in the back of our mind, and we need to deal with it.
Yeah, I think counseling brings about, as each of you kind of discussed, a wholeness. Like I think it helps deal with some of those things that may be unresolved. I guess you would know this better than I, but I think it would maybe give some kind of idea of how to have a better response to like life in some ways.
Right.
But yeah, so is there anything you want to interject before we go on to the next?
You said earlier. You said, "Why didn't I get counseling?" Or why am I?
Yeah.
I think sometimes you're not ready to deal with something until you're ready to deal with it.
Okay.
So even though it happened, let's say you were 7 years old and something traumatic happened in your life. And sometimes even your parents can take you to counseling. Some people do get taken to counseling. You know, like if their parent dies or something, and the parents will say, "Oh, well, we need grief counseling." But a lot of times the child is still not ready, you know, and something will come up in your life later on that won't let you go any further. You can't get past this point now. It must be dealt with. And then the reason why a lot of times we don't, it seems optional. Even to me in the culture, a lot of insurances don't pay for mental health services the way they pay for other services.
Right.
So a lot of times people just don't have extra money. You know, back in the day, and you're raising kids and all this. Sometimes people don't get to it because it seems like you touched on it already. You know, just be strong.
Right. We're always taught to be strong and pray through it.
Right.
But God made counselors.
Yeah.
You know,
Just like
so
he made
it's not
doctors,
It's not always a pray through it situation, because even in prayer, God is saying, "I made counselors. You need to go to the counselor. You need to seek counseling."
Yeah.
You know.
And I think about the scripture that comes to mind since we're talking about this is there's wisdom in a multitude of counsel.
Yes.
So I think that's what you're saying when I hear you say, I think sometimes we're praying, but God may be saying, go to counseling. And I think that's what I felt that morning when I woke up and said, this area of my life don't feel like it was dealt with.
Right.
I felt like there's something that I'm feeding myself, whether it be lies or whether it be like a perception or whatever, but it's not exactly what I need to be feeding myself, but I can't get out of my way fast enough to like deal with it. You know what I mean? Or to really address it and like nail it once and for all. And I mean, obviously not everything's gonna be nailed once and for all, but there's some things that really do need to kind of like be dealt with. And so that's kind of where I was at when I said that. But then another thing was something else you said, and now I'm losing my thought. But it was something you said with regards to I think everybody being broken. And I think that's one thing I want to speak into really quickly is that like when we're speaking in Christian because we are Christians and we're speaking with the Bible and with Scripture. But I think that everybody is affected by what we're saying. It's not just one-sided thing. It's not just, a Christian, whatever. While Christians definitely benefit from it. And I think we even have it kind of worse in the sense that we don't seek it because of our faith. Right, and because of sometimes we have a naive or ignorant way about our faith, and realizing that faith without the works is dead. But on the other hand of all that, what I was trying to get to the bottom of is that we're also speaking to the person who doesn't know God, the person who may be even an atheist, the person who may not even understand what we're talking about when we're saying wisdom in a multitude of counsel. But the reality is, everybody, the world, it was not made unto itself for people to be unto themselves. The world was made for relationships. The world was made with people, and with people that have different ideas other than ourselves. And sometimes in this world, we need to get out of ourselves to hear something different. So I think that like while we all have problems and different things like that, but sometimes the way you see your problem, I may see it differently. The way you see my problem, I may see it differently. So we can speak into each other's lives. Even like stuff like this can be a form of counseling, right? It could be a form of like, man, I didn't think of it that way. And now I have a new way to identify with this thing, and it's not the old way. So I don't know. I find that on every side, counseling is needed.
Absolutely.
No matter what your belief system is.
Right.
So what specifically, or I guess what keeps people, and more specifically Americans, from seeking counseling? Because I guess why I'm saying Americans, most of you who have seen our channel know that my husband is from Ghana. So I realize that the world is bigger than just us here. And that's why I'm specifying Americans.
Right.
What keeps us specifically? And then you kind of touched on culture. So if we can get into that real quick.
I think the history, so you use the word ignorance, there's still a level of ignorance, and I mean that in a pure sense of the word. It's a science that's sort of new, you know, and a lot of studying and all is still being done. So this ignorance is like, it's scary. So a lot of bad things were done historically to people that had mental health challenges.
Right.
And we swung the pendulum a little too far, I think. So once upon a time, anybody, you know, that was suffering in some way, they had them in institutions. They were doing experiments on them. They were mistreating them. And so people don't trust the process. Now, my humble opinion is they've closed a lot of that. If you went to a hospital now, you would be, they wouldn't have a bed for you. You'd be waiting. There's nowhere for these people to be. And so sometimes we actually see them on the street, you know, downtown and talking to themselves. And my heart breaks because I'm like, they need help.
Right.
But we swung it so far, like, oh, all the hospitals and institutions closed because they were mistreating people, and now they're just out there on the streets. Well, they need help. So I think that the history of psychiatry is not that great, right? And it's come a long way, but people still thinking about that and stories that they heard and things, and you know, I think that gets in the way of people getting help, and just stories that, you know, if your family and people that my family says this or people at church say that or whatever, and
hearsay, not being able to experience it themselves. I totally agree with you. Actually, like when you talked about the trust issues, like people don't trust people that they don't know. You know, it's hard for them to even trust people that they know, but they don't trust people that they don't know. I think they have to establish a relationship with them, and they also, like I said, you know, their pride get in the way, because a lot of times when people go to counseling, you know, even myself, I used to think, well, someone's going to think something's wrong with me if they think I'm going, you know, if they find out I'm going to counseling. Or maybe something is wrong with me. And another thing is, I think some people don't want to deal with what they're going to find out about themselves. They don't want the truth to come out. There's some skeletons in the closet, you know, things that happen in the family or something traumatic that caused them to be mentally ill or, you know, start going through whatever it is that they're going through. I just feel like some people don't want that to come out because they don't want to deal with it.
That's a good point. I never really thought about. I always thought like, oh, you know, people don't want to show any weakness or whatever. But that's just to be human. Like, it's kind of unrealistic to say you can go through all of life and never, all that life dishes out, and you never need help. And we need to be careful because our loved ones that are heavy drinking, heavy smoking, gambling, shopping, you know, dabbling drugs, they are trying to help. They're trying to soothe their mental capacity without actually going to actually just say, I need some help. I like someone to talk to. And trusting people is so funny because I think that might even could be cultural or different ethnic groups, because there are some people who think, I want to go to a counselor because because a counselor, part of our training is you don't judge, and people are self-autonomous. You are in charge of yourself. So if you say, I'm just going to do this one session, I'm never coming back, even though my judgment might say, oh, you would really benefit from coming, I can't make you keep coming back, you know, so you are in charge of yourself. But a lot of people will go to a counselor because they don't know you in any other aspect of your life, and they are bound by law and HIPAA and everything to keep it confident. So you would be more comfortable letting that out, as opposed to if you told your aunt or your friend or something, and they may judge you for it, or it might stir up something within the family if you reveal it, you know. So